welcome back to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer, and in today's episode, we're going to discuss more prototypes for the NES. In the previous episode, I discussed some prototypes for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, and we're going to continue on with that as there are quite a few. Actually, this may stretch out for another episode or two, and in the last episode, I'm going to discuss some of the prototypes that have not yet been dumped or made readily available, but we do know they exist. And anytime with prototypes, the reasons for their cancellation vary from system to system. With the NES, a lot of it can be chalked up to the stringent rules that Nintendo made for their any third-party game company that wanted to release games for their systems. But there are other ones as well. So without further ado, let's get into the games. And our first game for today is Dino Hockey. This was set to be released in 1991. It was actually shown at the SCES that year. And basically the story is the Ice Age is coming and dinosaurs are going to play hockey. It's interesting. Best way I can describe it, it's like, I guess, a kiddie version of Hit the Ice or Blades of Steel. Nothing really special. I'm not really sure why it was canceled, but yeah, it's not really anything special, to be honest. Next, from 1990, we have Chip's Challenge. Now, this was actually originally released for the Atari Lynx, and had an extension level. Now, for some reason, this was actually not released. When I first heard the name Chip's Challenge, I thought it was going to be a golf game for some reason. Now, this is kind of a maze strategy type game where you're trying to find your way out of each of these rooms, and it gets hard really, really fast. Really a fun game, though, to be honest with you, and one I'm definitely going to be returning to later. Actually, the playable build was released in 2015. I'm not sure if this game would have done well if it had been released. I don't know how well it did on the Lynx. I think a lot of things didn't do as well on the Lynx, but overall it's kind of a neat game that you may want to check out if you're into puzzle games. Alright, next up we have Dracula Night Out. This was set to be released by Parker Brothers in 1991, and in this game you take on the role of Count Dracula, who is trying to work his way down his castle and avoid hostile villagers. And your power-up? Reebok pumps. Remember those shoes? I actually had a pair of those myself. But anyway, so it's kind of a cross-promotional game, I guess you could say. However, the game itself was not released. Why is really unknown. It may have been a licensing issue. Who knows? However, there are some really cool cart reproductions that different collectors have been looking for. You can find those all over the internet, and it's kind of a cool game, a really original concept, and I had a lot of fun playing it, and I think you will as well. Our DriveIn is a sim racing arcade game that was released by Atari Games in 1989. In this one, you test drive a sports car on courses that emphasize stunts and speeds. It features one of the first 3D polygon driving environments. Really cool. The cabinet itself, you're actually in the car, and you can see the graphics themselves are really, really neat. And of course, when any game is successful, they are going to want to port it out. Am I right? And they did port it out to various degrees of success. In 1989, they would port it to the Amiga. In 1990, for the MS-DOS and Spectrum. Probably the most well-known port would be for the Sega Genesis. In 1990, Tangen had plans to release their own port of the game, probably unlicensed, of course. If you're not familiar, Tangen was one of those third-party game companies that pretty much decided to release whatever they wanted to, whether it was licensed or not, and they ended up getting themselves pretty much sued out of existence. So this was to be their port of hard driving for the NES. As you can see, the polygon graphics are not there, but they did the best they could with it. I'm not really sure if this would have been successful. I think as just awesome as the arcade port was, I don't really think fans would have enjoyed this as much, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Heroquest was a very successful tabletop board game, and so they thought that it would be a great idea to release it as a video game. And it was actually released for several different platforms, for the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, DOS, ZX Spectrum. I believe this was actually one of those games that was kind of a big hit in the UK, judging by the places it was ported to. And they had plans to release it for the NES. However, I don't think they got very far with it. As a matter of fact, when I was trying to play it, I couldn't get out of the first room. So I'm going to check out the other versions eventually and see how those turn out. They did get pretty high reviews, so I'm curious to see what the release ports are like. Any of you that have known me for any length of time know that I am a lifelong wrestling fan. Always have been, always will be. And so I was really excited when this prototype for this game called UWC was found a couple years ago. I said, all right, this looks great. It's got some of my favorite wrestlers who, up until that point, had not even been featured in a wrestling game. So I said, all right, I'll give it a try, as I was a big fan of WCW. And actually, for those of you not in the know, UWC was originally going to be the name of World Championship Wrestling until they decided to go with WCW after Ted Turner purchased it, and it's a long story. This game, however, man, it's just, I don't know what to say. The graphics are kind of nice for 1989, although to be honest, the moveset is a total mess. I couldn't figure out the moves to save my life on this one. And I picked Ric Flair. You have hit points here, but pulling off the moves is damn near impossible. I looked all over online trying to find like a move set or any sort of directions, but there were none to be found. This game wasn't even advertised, and most people didn't even know it existed until a few years ago. So if any of you guys have been more successful at this game, let me know in the comment section below, because I'd really like to know what the hell I'm doing in it. I know for some of you it's probably hard to imagine that Disney would actually cancel a game, but if you are a long-time subscriber of this channel and you go back to the Atari 2600, Disney has pulled that a couple times, especially with the old Snow White game. And actually this game wasn't quite canceled. It was originally released for the Famicom as Mickey Mouse 3 and was going to be released for the NES. Unfortunately, after being translated very roughly, this game was quietly canceled. Now, this game, it had been released in America, was called Mickey Mouse Dream Balloon. In this game, you take on the role of Mickey Mouse, and you are trying to earn money to buy a present for Minnie Mouse. You're selling balloons. And Pluto tells you that Minnie Mouse is unconscious and won't wake up, and so the quest begins. It's your typical platformer, nothing special. Really kind of fun though, and honestly I'm gonna delve into this one a little bit deeper too when I do an episode about Disney games on the NES. So if you get a chance to give this a try, I highly recommend it. It's overall a pretty fun game. Next up we have Mike Ditka's Big Play Football / Quarterback Scramble. Alright, now this is coming directly from the Lost Media Wiki, one of the coolest websites on the internet. Now, this was an NES football game that was developed by Natsume and planned for release by Accolade in 1990. The game was also a localized version of American football game Quarterback Scramble that was released in Japan by Pony Canyon. Okay, and it was also planned that another version would be released by FCI under the title Quarterback Scramble. Now, this game would have been a game being endorsed by Mike Ditka. For those of you that are not from the Chicago area or are still not living off Super Bowl 20, Mike Ditka was the coach of the Chicago Bears that led them to the Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 20. Okay, now, the game seemed like it was quietly canceled. Okay, Accolade would release Mike Ditka Ultimate Football for DOS and Sega Genesis in 1991. However, this particular build, the Mike Ditka's Play Football, kind of like disappeared. The only thing that we found, or that was found, was this quarterback scramble. Now, if you get the ROM, it says that it's Mike Ditka's Big Play Football, but actually it's the quarterback scramble game. All right, now this first surfaced June 6, 2019, and was readily made available a couple years later. Now, no prototype of Mike Ditka's Big Play Football is surfaced yet. We do know that somebody does actually have the ROM, but it has not yet been dumped. But we do have some screenshots and covers and all kinds of other stuff from the game. As far as this game itself, this is definitely not one of the best football games I've ever played. Actually, I'd say worst, because passing is damn near impossible. This is definitely not Tecmo Bowl or Tecmo Super Bowl, and honestly, I think had this been released, it probably would not have done very well. Alright, when I first heard about this game, Escape from Atlantis, I thought, oh wow, it's going to be in the same universe as the original Atlantis games for the Atari, back that they had a sequel to it, and the game was all cool and everybody loved it, and they ended up putting out a really awesome challenge version and all that. Well, that's not what this is. In this one, you're basically this schmo trying to get off of Atlantis before it sinks. Yeah, it's not great. It was supposed to be published by Color Dreams, and if you're familiar with any of their games, they're usually crap, and yeah, this one is one that we can just kind of be happy it wasn't released. And our next game is Mei Island. This was actually going to be a localized version of a Famicom game. In this game, you're trying to get to these islands, and the only way to get there is to board a pirate ship and steal the key to the island from the pirates. Not a bad game, honestly. I haven't played the Famicom version, but I do plan to. It's not bad. It's very original, I'll give it that, but I need to play it a little more seriously and figure it out. But overall, it seems like kind of a cool game. If any of you have played the Famicom version or have actually mastered this game, let me know in the comments section below. And our final game for today is a really addictive puzzle game that I highly recommend trying. This is Pescar. Now, because of the worldwide success of Tetris in the late 80s, the world was pretty much deluged with a lot of puzzle type games. Some successful, some not so. Now, unfortunately, this one wasn't released, and there's a long story behind it. I think the developers felt that it wouldn't be successful. Now, in this one, you have these fish-type creatures that are dropping, and the way to get rid of them is a little different than in Tetris. Where in Tetris, you have lines, and then in like Puli Puli, you have trying to get 4 colors. This one, you're trying to kind of sandwich them in. Like, you would have a red fish, and then you would have 2 or 3 like yellow ones in the middle, and a red fish on the other end. That's how you get rid of it. And it lets you know where, as they drop, where you could possibly get a piece from. It gets really fun. I mean, it took me a while to figure the game out, but once I got rolling, I just really enjoyed it. I've been really addicted to puzzle games pretty much since Tetris myself, so if any of you are puzzle type people, you're going to really enjoy this. I highly recommend finding this. This again is Pescar, and after playing it, let me know in the comments section below. Do you think it would have been successful or not? I'd really like to hear what you have to say. In our next episode, we're going to take a short break from our NES unit and discuss more Laserdisc video games, including a game that had you purchased it back in 1982, it would have cost you over $3,000 to play just this one game. Yep. To find out more about that, stay tuned for next week's episode. Well, that brings this episode of Classic Gamer 74 to a close. I really hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed presenting it to you. If you did enjoy it, let me know by giving me a big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload any new episodes. Connect with me on all my social media platforms, check me out on Patreon, and until next time, I will see you in the next episode. Until then, be strong, be safe, be happy, be healthy, and above all, take care of each other, be kind to each other, and stop hate of all kinds. See you soon. Bye for now.